Hello guys and gals, and this is part 11 of our reading of Whodunit, You Decide, Many Mysteries for You to Solve by Conrad and illustrated by Lucy Corvino. As always, we are going to look at the copyright information, and we will see here it says all rights reserved, and there are no exceptions to that, so it should be perfectly fine for me to read this on YouTube. We will be reading A Family Feud. I got about 7 minutes through here and realized that I had missed an entire section. So I'm having to redo this one, which is fine. We are reading A Family Feud, and we're going to look at that picture real well. Dr. Philip Bromley was overseeing the admission of his patient to Mount Cedar Hospital. It's a broken tibia, he told the administrator as he showed her the x-ray. I put Kurt McCoy in an inflatable leg cast. He can't walk on it. He'll need at least a day to rest and observation. To be honest, the fracture was a result of a fight between Mr. McCoy and his cousin. Until things cool down between the McCoys, I just think it better for Kurt to stay here. Kurt and Emil McCoy had jointly inherited the family's garment business, but their relationship soon deteriorated. The latest incident was a slugfest during which Emil swore that he would kill Kurt and then proceeded to smash his lower left leg with a baseball bat. Kurt needed some place safe to stay while he recovered from the trauma and worked out a lawsuit against his cousin, hence Mount Cedar. Dr. Bromley wheeled Kurt into his private room and made sure the window was latched. It was 8 p.m. The hospital ordered a security guard to monitor the hall and made a note on Kurt's chart not to disturb him until morning. At around 2 a.m., a nurse ignored that note and poked her head into room 507. She saw no trace of her patient, but did notice an open window. A deflated leg cast on the sill prompted her to peer out the window. Nothing was on the fire escape, but below it, in the deserted alley, lay the body of Kurt McCoy, face down on a pile of garbage bags. The police initially assumed that Kurt had removed his cast and tried to maneuver his way down the fire escape when he lost his balance, but that was before they saw the bullet hole. A .38 slug had penetrated the victim's chest and proved to be the cause of death. Emil was interviewed the next day at McCoy Fashion's office and warehouse in the industrial section of town. Emil showed no grief at all at the news. Well, at least he won't be suing me. When asked for his whereabouts between 9 p.m. and midnight, Emil had his answer ready. I was here in the office. We were having trouble with our Hong Kong suppliers. I was calling them or they were calling me all night. I picked up my car at about 1 a.m. Feel free to check with the phone company and the garage man. When the grand jury convenes 2 weeks later, it's not Emil who stands accused of killing Kurt McCoy. It's the doctor. Prosecution. The prosecution will point out the discrepancies in Dr. Bromley's story. Kurt McCoy died between 9 and midnight. According to the guard in the hall, Dr. Bromley visited Mr. McCoy at 12:30, at least half an hour after he had died, or after he'd been dead, and made this notation on his chart, 12:30, resting peacefully. And yet at that time, McCoy was already dead. The doctor has no explanation for this except to say that the coroner must be wrong. The district attorney counts off on his fingers. The door was guarded, the window locked, the victim feared for his life and trusted only Dr. George Bromley. Only Dr. Bromley had access, and he lied about Mr. McCoy being alive at 12:30. The defense. The prosecution has no evidence. My client has no motive. He owns no gun, nor was any gun found among his possessions. The guard, who had been outside the room all during Dr. Bromley's 12:30 visit, heard no sound, no gunshots, no struggle, nothing. This grand jury should never have been called. Your job as a grand jury is not to judge the guilt or innocence of Dr. Bromley, but to determine whether or not there is enough evidence to hold him for trial. Despite this simple directive, you cannot help looking at the larger picture. How exactly did Kurt McCoy die, and who killed him? Okay, let's see. Trial witnesses and evidence. This is what I actually forgot about reading in the previous one, so it didn't make sense when I got to this part. But anyways, this crime can be solved with 2 clues. Prosecution witness, officer on the scene. Patrolman Ingalls. I was the first to arrive in the alley at 2:14 a.m. The body of the victim, Kurt McCoy, was face down on some garbage bags. The body was cool to the touch and totally naked except for a waistband identifying the patient and his room number. An hour or so later, when the coroner allowed the body to be moved, I noticed that there was a little blood on the bags, less than I'd imagined, given the nature of the wound. We also found no blood in Mr. McCoy's room. Underneath the body were several broken pieces of glass, probably from a drinking glass. Coroner's report. Excuse me. The coroner reads from his report and states that the time of death had definitely been between 9 p.m. and midnight. Coroner. Death was caused by a single gunshot wound to the chest, severing the right coronary artery and causing the victim to quickly bleed to death. Other damage to the body included a severely fractured fibula bone in the lower left leg. The tibia bone was bruised but not broken. Prosecution witness, telephone technician. In an attempt to eliminate Emil McCoy, the only other principal suspect, the prosecution calls Bruce Turner, a telephone company technician. Mr. Turner, who reviewed records from the night of the murder, states that Emil McCoy had definitely been speaking on his office instrument. Bruce Turner. No cellular phones had been used to transmit or receive any of the calls. Neither had any special services such as call forwarding been used to mask the destination of an incoming call. The longest time elapsed between calls was approximately 20 minutes. And with no traffic, the McCoy office and warehouse are approximately 15 minutes away from Mount Cedar Hospital. Defense witness, Defense witness, Mrs. Barbara Connor, room 407. Defense. Mrs. Connor, you were a patient in the room directly below Mr. McCoy's. Did you see or hear anything the night of the murder that might be of interest to the court? I suppose you see, I woke up late. It was a warm night, and my window was open. Anyways, I reached out for some water on the nightstand, and I was kind of groggy. And when I stuck out my hand and I brushed my glass of water out the window. I suppose. You see, I woke up late. It was a warm night, and my window was open. Anyways, I reached out for some water on the nightstand. I was kind of groggy, and when I stuck out my hand, I brushed my glass of water out the window. That woke me up. I got up and looked out to see if it hit anybody. And what did you see? Well, right below my window was this alley, and there were some garbage bags there. My glass landed on top of the bags and had broken into a couple of pieces. There was no body in the alley, just the bags. And what time, and when did this take place? I checked my clock just before going back to sleep. It was exactly 12:12. The prosecution seems eager to cross-examine the witness, but since this is only a grand jury, it does not have the opportunity. Next we have prosecution witness, nurse on duty. The nurse who entered Kurt McCoy's room testified that she looked out the window and discovered the body at 2 a.m. She was impressed by the fact that the victim was naked, and that this led her to check around. She found Kurt McCoy's hospital clothes neatly piled on a chair. Looking into the closet of his hospital room, she found that Mr. McCoy's street clothes were missing, as were his wallet and keys. His crutches were still propped against the wall where she had last seen them. A police witness confirms later that the victim's street clothes were never found. Prosecution. Did anything unusual happen that evening before you discovered the body? The night nurse. Yes, I was on the second floor at about 1:30 taking a break when I noticed a man wandering around the halls. He seemed to be checking the room numbers on the doors. Before I could call out to him, he disappeared down a flight of stairs. Okay, now we can read this. That's the verdicts. We don't need the verdicts yet. Verdicts. Deliberations. A Family Feud. Deliberations. The broken glass under the body lends credence to the testimony of the patient in room 407. If there had been a body in the alley at 12:12 p.m., then the glass would have been found on top of it, not underneath. The lack of blood in the room and the minimal amount in the alley supports the same conclusion. Kurt McCoy was killed elsewhere and then moved after death. Since the guard stated emphatically that no one but Dr. Bromley had entered the room, whoever else entered or left the room must have done so through the window, which had been latched from the inside. Had Kurt really been resting comfortably at 12:30, as Dr. Bromley said? If so, then the coroner was wrong about the time of death. In addition, which leg bone had been broken? The fibia, according to the coroner's report, or the tibia, according to Dr. Bromley's x-ray? Dr. Bromley may not be the killer, but he certainly seems to be hiding something. Other facts are equally mysterious. Why was the body naked? Why were the victim's street clothes, wallet, and keys missing? And who was the man wandering around the second floor of the hospital around 1:30 the night of the murder? Okay, now let's go to the verdicts and see if we can. Okay. The verdict. Even though you don't believe Dr. Philip Bromley is guilty of murder, you do believe he is involved somehow, and that's sufficient reason for you to remand him to trial. When the verdict is announced, Dr. Bromley turns white and volunteers a confession. Dr. Philip Bromley. I know I could lose my license, even go to jail. Anyway, Kurt McCoy came to me after his fight. He was intending to sue his cousin for assault when I told him his leg wasn't broken. He asked me if there was any way we could fake a broken leg. He would pay me half of whatever he won. So I dusted off some old x-rays and had Kurt admit it. I had no idea he was planning anything more than a little fraud. That night I happened to be at the hospital seeing another patient. I looked in on Kurt at 12:30 and found his room empty. I didn't know what to do, so I pretended he was still there. Raising the alarm would have simply drawn attention to the fact that he could walk. It seemed pretty simple. Kurt was using me. Shortly after I gave the do not disturb order, he must have taken off. He must have taken off his cast, climbed out the window, and found a way to get to Emil's office. Maybe a cab. He caught Emil there and tried to kill him. Emil must have turned the tables and killed Kurt instead. Seeing the wristband, Emil deduced that Kurt must have sneaked out after 1 a.m. when the streets were deserted. Emil drove the corpse back in his own car. By wandering the halls, he figured out where room 507 was and planted the corpse beneath the window. If Kurt had been found wearing street clothes, then people might conclude that he had left the hospital willingly. So Emil stripped the body, then broke Kurt's leg for real. Funny, Kurt worked so hard to give himself an alibi, and all that wound up doing was giving his killer an alibi. Okay. And we've been reading from Whodunit, You Decide. Many Mysteries for You to Solve by Conrad and illustrated by Lucy Corvino. If you like this content, make sure you like and subscribe and ring the bell so you know when I upload. And if you want to support me in any way, all that information will be in the description below. As always, thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day.